and I'm an immigration attorney, so I take cases from clients throughout the United States. Now, there's been a few interesting things that have been happening with immigration and the news this week, and we got a nice little setup here, so we are going to be talking a little bit about that. If you're joining me here on TikTok, please, I want to say welcome to everyone who's coming in. I see a lot of you. Julia Perez, Iris, I see is back. Reyes Rodriguez is here. Good. Welcome, guys. We're going to be doing this session in English. I know usually we're doing our TikTok lives in Spanish, but we know that many immigrants have family members who speak English, and they may be the ones who need to be petitioning for their spouses or whatnot. So we want to reach the entire audience. So we got some interesting news to cover today. It has to do with news, politics, and immigration. It's all wrapped up into one. If you do have any questions, if you have any questions for me that are immigration related or law related, I guess, go ahead and put those in the comments. If you're on TikTok, you can request to be part of the multi-guest, and then we can do that live. We'll also look at opening up the phone lines later to make that happen. What we're going to do now is actually need to click on this to monitor the live. There we go. Now I can see everything here. I can see it there. I can see everything. Great. Let's jump right in. So I'm attorney James Betzold, 15 years of experience doing immigration. I've handled every type of immigration case there is. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to immigration. Let's jump into the news. Here, you know what? In fact, I think when I jump into, I might have to unmute something here. Let's give it a look.
The president has said countless times on the campaign trail, I've been with him at the rallies, I know you've been there covering them too, Peter, that he is focused on launching the largest mass deportation operation in American history.
Mass deportations?
Of illegal criminals. And if you a foreign national who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal. And so therefore you are subject
not by definition. No, not technically. All right, so this, of course, is, I forget her name, but she's the new press secretary for Donald Trump. And as the press secretary for Donald Trump, it's her job to go out and put out a tough face and whip the media into shape and get the message across that they need to get across. But if she's a lawyer, she's not a very good lawyer. I don't think she's a lawyer. I don't think she has any legal credentials. So what she's doing is public relations here, right? It's, for lack of a better word, it's propaganda, essentially. Right? So she's just saying, hey, if you entered the U.S. and you're illegal, or if you entered without documents, you've committed a crime and therefore you're a criminal and therefore you must be deported immediately. That's not how this system works exactly. Okay? When somebody comes to the border, if they enter unlawfully, yes, and they're caught, they're stopped, and they're usually just turned around. Right? Even when we were getting reports of, oh, so many people entering the U.S. and all this stuff happening, if they're caught and they have no legal ability to stay, if they're not requesting asylum, if they've not been here for 10 years, I mean, someone who's just entering the border is not going to be here for 10 years already anyway. But the point is there's a process that's in place. Okay? And for many of the people, they're turned around. It's called voluntary removal, or it's called expedited removal. Happens all the time. Happened all the time under Obama. Happened all the time under Trump the first time. Under Biden. Voluntary removal, voluntary return, expedited removal. Those things happen. Now, where things sort of went a little differently under Biden is they really opened up the ability to apply for asylum. And when you're applying for asylum at the border, it's not just a simple matter of proving everything once you get to the border. There's something called a credible fear determination that has to happen. So if you show up at the border and you say, hey, I want to be let in because I want to request asylum because I have a credible fear, I have a believable fear of danger or of harm back in my home country. If you pass that first hurdle, many times you'll be let in so that you can file that asylum claim in court, and there's a process and it takes time, and that's how that works out. Now, what happens instead is under Biden, they started opening that up even more. So you could make an appointment through an app, and when you did that, it's a fast track to a work permit. Okay, so that made a lot of Republicans very upset. A lot of those who are typically not in favor of immigrants made them very upset as well. And so that's one of the main complaints that one of the main complaints that the Republicans and the MAGA conservatives had was they made it so open. And at the same time, under Trump, they said, no, wait in Mexico. You want to apply for asylum, wait there. You'll come in and have a chance when you get a chance. So honestly, it was a lot of chaos. It was even hard to follow it sometimes to know what the actual law was at any given moment with what happened when you showed up at the border. But lawfully speaking, if you can show credible fear, that's enough to get you in and ask for asylum. Now, what they've done is they've reinterpreted and rewritten the regulations, or they're rewriting the regulations. They're acting under executive orders now so that they really are not going to let anyone even request it, right? They're just going to detain you and they'll probably just send you back. So it doesn't seem like it's worth it showing up to the border right now for anyone who thinks they're going to be coming in. Now, what she was saying, though, and I have to take offense at a couple things. One, to say that all undocumented immigrants are criminals. There's two sides to this argument, though. On the one side of the argument, the MAGA conservatives will say, well, there's a statute and it makes you a criminal if you violate the statute because there's a law that says you can't enter the U.S. unlawfully. Okay? Now, there is a statute. Let's go to it here.
The president has said
no, that wasn't it.
Times
this is it right here. This is a statute, 8 U.S. Code 1325, improper entry by alien. It can be a felony offense, right? Because there can be a 6 months. You can be in jail for 6 months. You can be in prison for 6 months on a first entry. On a subsequent entry, it can go up to, what does it say, 2 years? Yeah, I believe it's up to 2 years is the maximum. Okay, and I've had clients who were charged with this crime in federal court. But they were only a criminal under this offense once they were charged in federal court and convicted. Okay, so there is a distinction here. So for my liberal friends and our, the immigrant community who are typically more immigrant friendly, right? It is also true that you're not a criminal until you're convicted, until you plead guilty or you're found guilty. Now, in some circumstances, it's a distinction almost without a difference, right? Legally, there's a difference, right? If you've not been convicted, you're not a criminal. But let's take an extreme example. If somebody goes out and, you know what? I used this example last time in Spanish, and I think I may have been shadow banned for a moment. Let's say somebody goes out and commits a horrific crime. Very gross, very violent, let's say. But they didn't get caught yet. Are they a criminal? They're not a convicted criminal. They're a suspected criminal. When they're found and arrested, they're still a suspect until they're actually convicted or until they plead guilty. So if we want to be honest in the way that we're talking about this and not just feeding into the media frenzy and not just saying everybody's a criminal. Everybody's not a criminal, right? Not all undocumented immigrants are criminals, right? Maybe did they overstay a visa? Yeah. Is that against the law? You know what? There must be a statute for that too, but the one I pulled up here is the one for unlawful entry. The point is, we don't need to go around calling everybody criminals, all right? Although there is a criminal statute for it. And I do, I've had clients who've been charged with this, and the most that we can really do sometimes is try to undo their previous deportation so it doesn't make it an unlawful entry, or try and get them a different type of visa, or minimize the amount of time they're going to spend in jail, because it is a federal offense. Okay, let's go to video number 2. Video number 2, we're talking about Venezuela. Oh, and there's really no audio for video number 2. Yeah, because I have it turned down. But this is another flight that has now returned Venezuelans to Venezuela. Okay, so this was not happening for years because look, even when I started practicing law, I had clients who were from Venezuela, and they would tell me what it was like. And when they would go back to Venezuela, they're like, look, I don't even like going back to Venezuela because of the crime and because of this and because of that. And now, what was the last? Chavez, Hugo Chavez. He was the last dictator, well, president entre comillas, but he was more of a dictator because he magnificently won 99% of the vote somehow. But he was a dictator, and crime was awful. The situation was awful. The economy was in the tank. It was just awful. And then when Maduro took power, things got even worse. You know, sanctions from the U.S., so they couldn't sell their petroleum, their oil, and the whole country just went awful. So a lot of Venezuelans fled to Colombia, fled to Mexico, fled to the United States, because a lot of them already had family inside the United States. So, what do we see here? Sorry, something caught my eye in the comments here. If you have questions, go ahead and put those in the comments, TikTok or on YouTube. Share this live with your friends. We've got a couple more fun news stories with video and commentary to do here. We're doing this in English. Hablo español también, but I just finished one in Spanish, and I don't know if it got shadow banned or something because I may have said something that was too violent. But anyways, we're talking about that. We're talking about what's happening with Venezuela now. So what we see here is Venezuelans actually who had deportation orders in the U.S. have now been returned to Venezuela. Some of them, I'm sure, had criminal records. Some of them may not have. They may have just had a deportation order. Now, in the United States, for a couple years now, Venezuelans were given what's called temporary protected status, or TPS. They could get a work permit. They could live and work here in a temporary status. Right? It doesn't lead to residency. It doesn't get them citizenship. They can't vote. But TPS, temporary protected status, at least gave them some humanitarian relief in the form of being able to work. So that's that. Now we've got something we haven't talked about in a while, and that's Guantanamo Bay. Oh, hold on. We're going to have to unmute it.
Well, look, the Trump administration so far has transported about 100 Venezuelan migrant detainees to Guantanamo Bay, which, of course, President Trump has instructed officials to essentially convert into a massive detention center to hold people awaiting deportation, in this case to Venezuela. We know that the Trump administration recently brokered an agreement to have Venezuela send its own planes to the U.S. to pick up its nationals and to send them back to Venezuela. But so far, there has been no arrangement announced that would allow Venezuela to transport its nationals from Guantanamo Bay back to Venezuela. So it's really unclear what.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, you saw that video there. And I think what we'll do is we'll just sort of let that run in the background. So, according to this interview, Guantanamo Bay is open. And apparently, I don't know if we still have terrorists that are being held there or suspected terrorists or whatever. Of course, the big problem with Guantanamo Bay when you detain immigrants there is immigrants have a right to an attorney. It's called the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution. It applies to them. So if you take them and you move them to Guantanamo Bay, you give them the same problem that you gave the terrorists, is they had a hard time getting an attorney. How easy is it to get to Guantanamo Bay? Not easy. Because it's an American military base on a hostile country that no one's really allowed to travel to. And even if you do get to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, you better hope they treat you nice on the base there, on the U.S. base, because I'll tell you, I've been to Cuba, and there's no banking. You can't do banking there. You can't go to ATM and get cash. You have to bring all the cash you need with you, and be careful with that. Okay, food, not great. Everything's run down. It looks like Havana looks sort of like a bomb went off there. It looks like a disaster zone, right? Buildings have not been maintained in years. There's literally 2 blocks of buildings that are in decent shape that look nice, and the rest of it's just in ruins. So if I get a call from a client who's like, hey, can you come visit me and help me with my case? I'm in Guantanamo Bay. I don't know. You probably need top secret clearance to get there even. So that can be complicated, right? I don't know why they wanted to send migrants back to Guantanamo Bay. I think it was supposed to be an intimidation move. Maybe somebody in the Trump administration thought it was funny because they had all talked about closing Guantanamo Bay before. But again, just like Obama didn't close Gitmo, Trump didn't close it. Nobody closed it, right? Still, I think we still have detained terrorists there. But now I get detaining Venezuelans there. I don't know why they don't just send them back instead of dropping them off in Guantanamo Bay, where they're building like tents to house people in there. Yeah, the news doesn't always have to make sense. Just like our next clip here.
Several Asian countries to Panama.
Oh, here we go. We didn't hear that. Here we go.
Several Asian countries to Panama. Joining us now is one of the journalists behind that story, Hamed Aziz. Also with us, Mike Vigil, former Chief of International Operations for the Drug Enforcement Administration. So, Hamed, what's the significance of this latest deportation move by the Trump administration?
This is a major moment in immigration history. You know, the Trump administration being able to deport people from many nations, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, several other countries, including China, to Panama. This is unlike anything that I've seen before, where a country in South America is willing to take nationals of individuals from across the globe. And it appears that this will continue, at least for a few more flights, and could potentially allow the Trump administration a new way to deport people that are generally more difficult to remove.
And so, Hamed, have you been able to U.S. has deported?
Okay, so let's get the microphone here. So let's be clear. They got Asians. So when they say Asians, it could mean people from India, China, wherever, somewhere in Asia. It's a big area technically. But instead of deporting them to their home country, the Trump administration sent them to Panama. Now, I get what's going on here, and I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but let's think this through. If we've watched the news for these last few days, I'm going to change my position here. If we've watched the news for the last few days, we know that the Panama Canal has been in the news, and the U.S. wanting to take it back due to shenanigans by the Chinese or whatever, who are de facto controlling it. Okay, there's that whole argument. That's the news story, right? I'm not going to say who's right or wrong or what's going on for real there. But we know that the Secretary of State was down there talking to them with tough guy words, apparently, about how they need to treat American ships and how they need to treat American interests and how they need to protect their borders so that people don't sneak in through their borders to north and find their way to the United States. So I'm not too surprised. I'll bet one of the concessions that they gave during those talks about ownership of the Panama Canal and whether the United States is just going to take it back, I bet those talks included, hey, by the way, you're going to help President Trump with his immigration issues here. We are going to send you Asians, and then you're going to be in charge of getting them home. It's much easier for us to fly them to Panama than it is to fly them all the way over to Asia. Let the Panamanians deal with it. I don't know. Maybe they'll put them on ships. I don't know what they're going to do. But that's the first time I'm aware of, because when someone gets a removal order, it says right on the judge's order, you're being ordered removed to this country. And it's usually the country of nationality, citizenship, or origin. Okay, so they don't have an order to be removed to Panama. They have an order to be removed to, if they're from India, India, or if they're from China, China. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any appeals that come out of this, because it looks like they may have missed a step deporting someone to a country where they weren't ordered to deport them to. All right. We got a couple questions coming in before we do the last segment here. Let me just say hi to a few people as you're coming in. Hello, hello. Thank you for the follow. Let's see. What happened when you come in as a minor? Asked Darwin Cruz. What happens when you come in as a minor? Well, that depends. If you come in as a minor and you're with your parent, you typically just tagged on to their case. If they're able to request asylum, maybe you can request asylum too. If they're able to do something, maybe you can be tacked on as part of that case. Now, if you enter as a minor and you're unaccompanied and you don't have a parent here in the U.S., there's a different type of case. There's something called the special immigrant juvenile status, which you might qualify for, which is a way of protecting minors, right? We don't want minors to be abandoned or subject to danger in their home country, let's say, right? We got to be careful with our words because we're on social media. We don't want to get banned here or something. But that is that's the issue. What is this subject in here? The subject is immigration. I've been sharing some news updates to Uberto567. If you have any questions, I'm an immigration lawyer, 15 years of experience. I do have a couple more news stories to share, but I'm taking just a quick break here to answer some questions that have come in through the comments. So we got a lot of people who've joined. The white dude just got the #1 gifter badge. Nice. Just got the #1 gifter badge. Darwin Cruz, awesome. Mary, you followed us, thanks. The dangers start with open borders. Yeah. I mean, everyone has a different view on this. And even when you talk to immigration attorneys, you're going to get a wide array of views on the matter, right? There's what is the practical thing, what's overall good for the country, what's good for people and families, what about when there's an economic crisis, or what about when there's a dangerous crisis going on, what about when a lot of cities in a country are overrun by gangs and they're literally indiscriminately killing youth. Is it better to kick them out or to let them in? Not the gang members, but the youth who are innocent and trying to just not die. So there's a lot to debate on the topic. Obviously, open borders isn't something that exists anywhere. However, I will point out there is one place where there's at least 50 different states that do have open borders, and it's really not an issue. Can you guess what it is? Right? Don't mean to be provocative, but we live in a country of 50 states. And when you cross into another state, you don't have to show your papers. But then you get into the whole one world government and conspiracy theories, and then it's not even fun to talk about. So we'll just move on from there. All right, one more fun little story here coming up. Loaded in the barrel. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. No, we can't do that yet. Sorry. I got to free the mouse.
Sanctuary cities are causing us a lot of work. And rather than arresting a bad guy in Rikers Island, we have to go to the neighborhood and find them, find people that don't want to be found. It is hard because rather than one man arresting one bad guy in jail, we got to send whole teams to the field to find somebody that doesn't want to be found. And so it's hard work, but we're not giving up. We're coming. Again, the number's a lot higher than the word in the Biden administration, but we got to do more, and I've been real clear on that. And that's why we're making the operational changes now that I requested.
You went after Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria.
Okay, so they start off. This is Tom Homan. He's what we call the border czar. So he's specially appointed by the president to monitor the border situation and get ICE moving and getting people deported. That's his job. Okay. And sure seems like he's taking it seriously. There's been a lot of arrests, a lot of deportations recently. And that's why now he starts talking about sanctuary cities. Now, as an attorney, and I know even different attorneys have different views on this, but a sanctuary city, the best way to explain it is this. Okay, so here where I live in Michigan, I'm not aware of any actual sanctuary cities. But where we live, if an immigrant, a client of mine, let's say, commits a crime, gets arrested by the police, even if it's a small one, they'll typically call ICE. So they'll call ICE and say, hey, we've got this guy here. He's not a U.S. citizen. Do you want him? Do you want to come pick him up? And many times they'll say, yeah, we do. And unfortunately, it goes down to each individual police department and sometimes an individual officer, right? If they're going to call ICE or not. So you might have an officer who says, no, I'm not going to call ICE if it's just for driving without a license. But they might call ICE if it's anything more than that, right? Drunk driving, violent assault, domestic violence, things like that. Those are all reasons that even here that happens. But a sanctuary city has a rule in place that says the police can't call ICE, and they won't call ICE, period. They don't involve them at all. And so ICE has to do their job, but it's, and boy, I don't even like saying it, because really, I would hate being an ICE officer, and I wouldn't. There's better ways, I think, to handle the immigration issues that the country faces. But ICE's job is to be the police and to be the immigration police who come and take people and yank them out of the country and remove them. So sanctuary cities don't communicate with that at all. What Tom Homan is saying here is, look, sanctuary cities are making it difficult on us, but they're actually making it difficult on everyone. Why? Because we're still going to go find these people. They can get their address. They can go to their house. And instead of just taking the criminal, Tom Homan is saying, ICE is taking everyone. So if we have to come find you, we're going to take you, and we're going to take everybody else in your house that's undocumented too. Whereas if the sanctuary cities would just let them go to the jail and arrest them there, well, there's less collateral arrests. And while that has a certain logic to it, this is also coming from Tom Homan, who was the architect of the family separation policy, which is just completely disgusting. That you're going to rip kids out of their mother's arms while they're being processed and coming into the United States. And of course, that children get lost. And there are children who still probably haven't found their parents after that happened. So, as a practical matter, yeah, there would be less collateral arrests. But as a practical matter, I don't think he's very sincere when he feigns concern for it. So let's keep listening. He talks about something else too.
Ocasio-Cortez for hosting a webinar for immigrants called Know Your Rights with ICE. I want to play what you said. Are you suggesting that she should be prosecuted?
I'm suggesting, and I'd ask the Department of Justice, where's that line on impediment, right? It's a broad statute.
Okay, impediment is not a word. So Tom Homan does this with a few different words I've noticed, but he kind of just makes up his own, kind of like George Bush used to do. So I don't want to poke fun at him for it, but I think it's important to know what he's talking about here. He's saying Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, right, representative, believed from New York. She held a Know Your Rights clinic, and he was making public statements about how this is interfering with ICE's job, and now I'm going to say it wrong too. She's interfering with an ICE operation, essentially is what he's saying. He's saying because the whole point of these Know Your Rights clinics or these Know Your Rights sessions are so that people can avoid ICE. Okay, so he has a problem with that. So he says he asked the Department of Justice to tell him exactly where the line is between her just teaching people what their rights are and then actually interfering with an investigation. What they would like, I'm sure they would like the Department of Justice and the courts to say, hey, if you're encouraging people in certain strategies, then that's actually getting in the way of or obstructing the operations of ICE, and that's illegal. That's what he would like them to say. However, and this is actually a fine line that attorneys have to walk sometimes. So for example, if I'm in my office meeting with a client and we're talking about, there are different options that they might have for immigrating to the United States, could be through a visa, could be through a marriage, could be through an asylum case. If we're talking about those options and it turns out they really don't have any, which is the case much of the time. If they don't have any options, I say, look, well, my job is to let you know what your options are and what we can do to help you with your options. Sometimes they'll be tempted to ask me, well, how can I work without a social security number? And I will just say, you can't. You can't legally work without the proper documentation. And they'll be like, well, but my cousin or my whoever does this. I'm like, look, no, that's not what I'm here for. I can't tell you how to break the law. I can tell you what we can do to help you get status legally by using the law legitimately. So I think Tom Homan either doesn't understand that or is just trying to make another political point here.
I'll be honest with you, sanctuary cities.
When he's talking about that, because what he would like is the court to give him carte blanche to go and arrest Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, even though she's just sharing information about knowing your rights. Because something important you can know. It's important to know that you have rights under the Fourth Amendment, which grants you protection against unlawful searches and seizures. And that right extends to everyone present in the United States. You don't have to be a citizen to have rights under the Fourth Amendment. And that's how it should be. That's how we want it. Because if it doesn't protect everyone in the U.S., then a police officer could pull you over, search your car, and say, oh, I thought you were undocumented. Now, who out there would like that? Is there anyone who trusts the police that much? Right? Especially when we know that there's accounts of some officers planting stuff on people's cars. Okay, we don't want that. The Constitution and the Fourth Amendment exist for a reason. There's also a constitutional right to have an attorney represent you when you have to face the government. Okay, that's the Sixth Amendment. Okay, you also have the right to not incriminate yourself. You have the right to make the government come up with evidence against you, but they can't make you testify against yourself. That's not fair either. Okay, so these are all rights that exist for anyone who's present in the United States, whether you're a citizen, resident, or undocumented. Okay, so those are the sorts of things that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was sharing in the Know Your Rights situations. You know, what can I do? We've all seen these. And if you love, let's say, liberty and freedom, you've probably watched a few of these on TikTok yourself, where people go to a border patrol checkpoint, and there's, hey, you a citizen? I don't answer any questions. And they're like, you have to. And they're like, I'm not answering, right? Thinking they're being patriots by trying to provoke a border patrol agent, right? Well, that's what we're dealing with. We don't want a world where, we don't want a country where at the drop of a hat, any police officer can say, show me your papers. That was Nazi Germany. That was literally what they did there. And you don't have to do that here. Only if the police officer has probable cause that you committed a crime. They can detain you, investigate, and figure things out, right? So those are the sorts of rights that people are sharing, right? If they come to your door, do you have to let them in? Most of the time, ICE does not come with a warrant that's signed by a judge. They come with an administrative warrant that doesn't allow them to break and enter a home. It's not the same kind of warrant that they come to make an arrest of a felon with. It's a different thing. They can get that. They can still go to a judge and get an order for that. And then they would be able to go into someone's house to arrest them and detain them and deport them. But most of the time, they don't do it. They could, but that's not my job to change it. That's the government's job if they want to change what their procedures are that allow them to do that more often. All right. Hey, Mary, thanks for the follow. Huberto, thanks. Inmigración, ya hablamos español también, claro. But we are doing this one in English here. And we got a few more minutes left. That was the last major story we were going to share. Let me share a couple things about me. If you're watching, or if you've shared this with someone who needs an immigration attorney, if you need a great immigration lawyer, I'm an immigration lawyer. I have 15 years of experience, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty darn good. Okay, we've handled every type of immigration case out there, and we can help you as well. Here's our website. We have a lot of free resources on our website, videos, informational things about different types of cases, what you might need to do in your case. You can read the reviews that our clients have. Our clients love us, and they love us because we are the type of immigration attorney that has enough staff to answer the phones. So when we have clients who need help or they need an update on their case or they have a question, they can get a hold of us. We don't lose files. We have everything digital. It's all electronic. And so we take good care of our clients. When notices come in the mail, we call them. We confirm that they understand what's happening in the case, and we make sure things go smoothly. You can see here we have a tool here to build your own power of attorney for child care. You know, that's been a topic recently. You can see we also have a way to schedule an appointment directly with us. We have an office in Holland, Michigan, and Wyoming, Michigan, and also online. So anywhere you are in the U.S., you can schedule an appointment online with us here. We also do a free immigration screening. So if you come here and you click on this button, you can schedule a free immigration screening. If you have an immigration case, you want to know if you have anything you can do, if you have options. Maybe you want a second opinion on your case because you got some advice or something that didn't sound right or you're just not sure about. I'd be happy to give you a second opinion as well. Go ahead and schedule a free, convenient time there. You'll meet with my paralegal. They'll get the information necessary. I'll review the information. And if we can help you, we will. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining today. That is going to do it for us now. Let's go back to our main. There we go. That's going to do it for us. I'm attorney James Betzold. I've got 15 years of experience being an immigration attorney here in the United States. We've helped thousands of families obtain their American dream by uniting together here in the United States. And that's what we do. We unite families through immigration. That's my website, visafeliz.com, and that's our phone number. We look forward to helping you in your journey.